Babylon, one of the most famous cities in the Bible, was an empire that dominated the ancient world as a center of trade, military power, culture, and religion. Known for its wealth and opulence, it also symbolized mystery, intrigue, decadence, and corruption. The imperial city of Hammurabi, its greatest king Nebuchadnezzar, saw its sudden fall in a single night, as decreed by God himself. This event took place over 2,500 years ago. Today, Babylon is rising again on the Mesopotamian plain, its partial rebuilding capturing the attention of theologians, scholars, and teachers of Bible prophecy alike. For some, this signals the rise of the dreaded Babylon the Great, as foretold in the book of Revelation. But what relevance does this hold for us today? And why does the legacy of Babylon continue to fascinate us? Join us as we explore Babylon's past, present, and future. For years, as historian, I have been fascinated with the ancient Near East, especially as it relates to the Bible. When we think of the places where the events of the Bible occurred, we usually think of Bethlehem, where Jesus was born, Nazareth, where he grew up, or Jerusalem, where he was crucified. But many famous events of the Bible took place hundreds of miles from where Jesus lived, in a part of the world called Mesopotamia. Mesopotamia means the land between the rivers, referring to the Tigris and the Euphrates. Today, of ancient Mesopotamia lies within the borders of modern Iraq. This region is renowned as the cradle of civilization, with some of its cities dating back to the very beginning of recorded history. Perhaps the most famous of all is Babylon, located on the banks of the Euphrates River, about 60 miles south of present-day Baghdad. Babylon has had a long and fascinating history, though today, most of ancient Babylon is nothing but crumbling ruins and broken remnants beneath the sands of time. So why this fascination with the long-gone empire and a decayed city? Well, there's an intriguing story here, told through the hundreds of historical and religious texts uncovered by archaeology. This information, combined with the Bible, makes the story of ancient Babylon an important one for us today. In the Bible, Babylon is more than merely a place on the map. Babylon symbolizes an idea, a philosophy, a way of thinking opposed to God. This ideology, based on human reason, pride, and arrogance, often expressed as self-indulgent materialism, is still with us today. This attitude caused God to intervene in the affairs of ancient Babylon, as we'll see. The Bible writers chronicled and preserved the story of ancient Babylon to give us insight into our world today and far into the future. Our story begins long before there was a city named Babylon. It starts with a group of travelers who made their way into the sun-baked plain of southern Mesopotamia, or 2,000 years before the birth of Jesus. The Bible tells us these wanderers were descendants of the patriarch Noah and his family. In the decades following the Great Flood, they migrated southward along the valleys of the Tigris and Euphrates. These early settlers began to establish communities that would eventually grow into some of the world's earliest cities. Over time, one of these settlements would become the city of Babylon. Its strategic location and fertile land helped it thrive and expand, becoming a significant power in the ancient world. This growth set the stage for Babylon's transformation into a mighty empire under leaders like Hammurabi and Nebuchadnezzar, whose reigns brought about extensive developments in law, architecture, and culture. The allure of Babylon continues to captivate us, not just because of its historical significance, but also due to its symbolic representation in biblical prophecy. As we delve into the history and legacy of Babylon, we uncover lessons that remain relevant, shedding light on human nature, the rise and fall of civilizations, and the enduring power of divine intervention in the course of human events. The book of Genesis tells us that Noah's sons settled in the plain of Shinar, a region later known as Babylonia, situated in what is now southeastern Iraq. God had commanded Noah's sons to spread out and populate the earth, but they chose to stay united under their own authority. They said to each other, "Come, let us build ourselves a city, with a tower that reaches to the heavens, so that we may make a name for ourselves, and not be scattered over the face of the whole earth. According to the 1st century historian Flavius Josephus, the leader of these people was Nimrod, Noah's great-grandson. The Bible describes Nimrod as a mighty warrior on the earth. Under his leadership, the people began to construct a great tower. Nimrod's ambition was to build an empire, and to keep people united under his rule. The Tower of Babel, I believe, illustrates this purpose perfectly. It was their attempt to be creators, aspiring to the divine. Genesis presents a creation as a reflection of God's nature, and the builders, in their quest for power, saw themselves as little creators, destined for greatness, even divinity, much like the ancient rulers who often saw themselves as gods. Building a tower that would reach the heavens represents humanity's perennial attempt to bridge the physical and the spiritual. Artists have envisioned the Tower of Babel in various ways, some quite fanciful. Most likely, it was a simple terraced mound of brick and earth, similar to later temple towers, known as ziggurats. Ziggurats are characterized by their square bases and sloping sides, leading to a shrine at the top. The plain of Shinar, with its flat terrain, would have allowed a building just 100 feet high to be visible for miles. The medieval Tower of Samarra, located north of Baghdad, is a spiral minaret about 150 feet high and served as a landmark for the region. Some medieval travelers even mistook it for the Tower of Babel. The Bible tells us that God allowed the builders to work on the tower for a time before intervening. The Lord came down to see the city and the tower that the men were building. The Lord said, "If as one people speaking the same language, they have begun to do this, then nothing they plan to do will be impossible for them. Come, let us go down and confuse their language so they will not understand each other." So, the Lord scattered them from there over all the earth, and they stopped building the city. This is why it was called Babel. There, the Lord confused the language of the whole world. In a sudden act, God confused their language, causing a babel of voices on the scaffolding. The architect could no longer communicate with the workers. Panic ensued, halting the construction of the city and its great tower abruptly. In the Akkadian language, the site of the unfinished town was known as the Gate of God, but the Hebrews named it Babel, derived from the Hebrew word meaning to confuse. Babylon, therefore, is simply the Greek transliteration of the Hebrew Babel. Thus, Babylon and Babel are the same, with Babylonia referring to the region centered around the city. The story of the Tower of Babel was meant to teach a profound lesson. God's tolerance of human pride and rebellion has its limits. Early on, Babylon became a symbol of opposition to God. Human pride is a recurring theme in the Bible's references to Babylon. The grandiose dreams of the builders of the Tower of Babel mark an essential historical milestone, giving us our first glimpse into a civilization organized against God. This was God's first intervention in Babylon's history, but it would not be the last. Over 2 centuries later, Babylon re-emerged on the world scene, this time under the Amorites, around 2000 BC. Historians refer to this period as the Old Babylonian Empire, with Hammurabi being its most famous king. The legacy of the Tower of Babel set the stage for Babylon's rise and its enduring symbolism in biblical history. The book of Genesis tells us that Noah's sons settled in the plain of Shinar, a region later known as Babylonia, situated in what is now southeastern Iraq. God had commanded Noah's sons to spread out and populate the earth, but they chose to stay united under their own authority. They said to each other, "Come, let us build ourselves a city, with a tower that reaches to the heavens, so that we may make a name for ourselves, and not be scattered over the face of the whole earth." According to the 1st century historian Flavius Josephus, the leader of these people was Nimrod, Noah's great-grandson. The Bible describes Nimrod as a mighty warrior on the earth. Under his leadership, the people began to construct a great tower. Nimrod's ambition was to inspire awe and wonder, to build an empire, and to keep people united under his rule. The Tower of Babel perfectly illustrates this purpose. It was their attempt to be creators, aspiring to the divine. Genesis presents a creation as a reflection of God's nature, and the builders, in their quest for power, saw themselves as little creators, destined for greatness, even divinity, much like the ancient rulers who often saw themselves as gods. Building a tower that would reach the heavens represents humanity's age-old attempt to bridge the physical and the spiritual. Artists have envisioned the Tower of Babel in various ways, some quite fanciful. Most likely, it was a simple terraced mound of brick and earth, similar to later temple towers known as ziggurats. Ziggurats are characterized by their square bases and sloping sides, leading to a shrine at the top. The plain of Shinar, with its flat terrain, would have allowed a building just 100 feet high to be visible for miles. The medieval Tower of Samarra, located north of Baghdad, is a spiral minaret about 150 feet high and served as a landmark for the region. Some medieval travelers even mistook it for the Tower of Babel. The Bible tells us that God allowed the builders to work on the tower for a time before intervening. The Lord came down to see the city and the tower that the men were building. The Lord said, "If as one people speaking the same language, they have begun to do this, then nothing they plan to do will be impossible for them. Come, let us go down and confuse their language so they will not understand each other." So, the Lord scattered them from there over all the earth, and they stopped building the city. This is why it was called Babel. There, the Lord confused the language of the whole world. In a sudden act, God confused their language, causing a babel of voices on the scaffolding. The architect could no longer communicate with the workers. Panic ensued, halting the construction of the city and its great tower abruptly. In the Akkadian language, the site of the unfinished town was known as the Gate of God, but the Hebrews named it Babel, derived from the Hebrew word meaning to confuse. Babylon, therefore, is simply the Greek transliteration of the Hebrew Babel. Thus, Babylon and Babel are the same, with Babylonia referring to the region centered around the city. The ancient monarchs of Babylon wielded totalitarian power. They held near absolute authority, combining legislative, judicial, and executive roles into one. Historically, these kings often perceived themselves as deities, setting themselves up as little gods. Few rulers acknowledged a power greater than themselves, often seeing themselves as the ultimate interpreters of the law and above it. Consequently, it's rare to find rulers who did not view themselves as divine in some respect. Hammurabi stands out as a significant figure among these ancient monarchs. He built one of the greatest empires of the ancient Near East, establishing a civilization that lasted over 1,000 years beyond his reign. His empire was grounded in power, prestige, and the pursuit of wealth, with little regard for the creator God. Despite his achievements, Hammurabi's dynasty was not eternal. After Hammurabi's more than 40-year reign, barbaric tribesmen from the eastern mountains invaded around 1600 BCE, initiating a prolonged period of trouble for Babylonia. The Hittites, another group mentioned in the Bible, sacked and burned Babylon. They carried off Babylonian wealth and prisoners to Anatolia, modern-day Turkey. Later, the Assyrians, familiar to readers of the Old Testament, conquered Babylon. This conquest led to centuries of political chaos before Babylon could re-emerge as an independent city, marking the end of its first great age. Assyria, one of Babylon's powerful rivals, is symbolized by massive statues like the human-headed winged bull, which testifies to Assyrian power. The Assyrian Empire was a formidable military machine, notorious for its brutality and oppression. In 689 BCE, Assyrian king Sennacherib inflicted severe humiliation on Babylon in an attempt to suppress its resurgence. His forces pillaged and burned the city, throwing its rubble into the Euphrates River and flooding its foundations. Sennacherib boasted, "I made its destruction more complete than that by a flood so that the site of the city and its temples and gods might not be remembered. I completely blotted it out with floods of water and made it like a meadow." However, Sennacherib's efforts to annihilate Babylon were in vain. Babylon's resilience led to its rise once more. the Chaldeans eventually occupied and rebuilt Babylon, and they were the ones who finally humbled the proud Assyrians. In 612 BCE, the Chaldeans stormed Nineveh, the Assyrian capital, utterly destroying it. Today, the ruins of Nineveh attest to the city's near total annihilation, so complete that it remained undiscovered until about 150 years ago, with Assyria's power broken. Babylon, under the Chaldeans, re-emerged with a vengeance. This resurgence of Babylon offers significant insights into biblical history and prophecy. Babylon, a great city and symbolic nemesis of God, repeatedly emerges from destruction, continually influencing the course of civilization. Following Assyria's collapse, both Egypt and Babylon vied to fill the resulting power vacuum. 1,000 years after its golden age, Babylon once again had the opportunity to regain its former prominence and prestige. This cyclical pattern of rise, fall, and resurgence defines Babylon's legacy. Its ability to rebound from devastation and reassert its influence makes Babylon a pivotal and enduring symbol in history. The city's repeated emergence underscores its significant impact on the ancient world and its lasting influence on biblical narratives and prophecies. The Assyrian collapse left a vacuum that both Egypt and Babylon sought to fill, highlighting Babylon's enduring relevance in the ancient Near East. Thus, Babylon's history is a testament to its resilience and lasting influence on the course of civilization. In the summer of 605 BC, well-armed Babylonian forces launched a sudden and decisive assault against the Egyptians. Their forces clashed at Carchemish in northern Syria, resulting in a fierce battle that ultimately cost Egypt its control over the Middle East. Nearly a millennium after Hammurabi's reign, Babylon once again emerged as the dominant power in the ancient Near East. Babylon was back, but the question remained: could this resurgent, rebuilt Babylon avoid the fate that had befallen Nimrod's city and Hammurabi's empire? Time would reveal the answer. The Egyptian army under Pharaoh Necho II faced off against the Babylonians at Carchemish on the Euphrates River in 605 BC. The fighting was intense, and the Egyptians suffered staggering losses, leading to the loss of their control over the Middle East. The Babylonian general who routed the Egyptians was the 25-year-old crown prince, who would later become Babylon's greatest king, the legendary Nebuchadnezzar. Under his rule, Babylon would achieve its greatest glory, becoming the most powerful metropolis of its time, envied and feared by friends and foes alike. Nebuchadnezzar's reign is a fascinating study of power and ambition. He was a composite of various human traits, powerful and ruthless when necessary, yet plagued with doubts and questions. He sought advisors who could answer his questions, eliminating those who failed to satisfy him. This characteristic was typical of many Oriental despots. Nebuchadnezzar was also a builder, eager to ensure his name would endure through the ages. He embarked on extensive construction projects, not only in Babylon, but also beyond, rebuilding temples and striving to please the gods. Despite his uncertainty about their will, this complexity made him a formidable and intriguing ruler. Nebuchadnezzar's military campaigns further cemented his legacy. In 605 BC, he conquered Jerusalem, reducing the kingdom of Judah to a vassal state. 5 years later, despite the prophet Jeremiah's advice, the Jews rebelled against Babylon. Nebuchadnezzar responded by laying siege to Jerusalem, which fell in 597 BC. He took the Judean monarch, young King Jehoiakim, back to Babylon and installed a puppet king, Zedekiah, on Judah's throne. These events are well documented by biblical writers and confirmed by archaeological findings, such as the Nebuchadnezzar Chronicle, a clay tablet translated in 1956, that records the Babylonian defeat of the Egyptians at Carchemish, Nebuchadnezzar's rise to power, and the capture of Jerusalem. Despite these measures, Judah's rebellion was not quelled for long. A decade later, Judah's puppet king, Zedekiah, plotted with the Egyptians. Nebuchadnezzar responded with a final, devastating attack. For 18 months, he besieged Jerusalem. In the summer of 587 BC, he captured and destroyed the city and its temple, plundering its treasures and carrying off most of Judah's remaining population to Babylon. This marked a significant and tragic moment in biblical history, confirming Nebuchadnezzar's ruthless and unyielding determination to maintain his empire's dominance. The events of 605 BC and Nebuchadnezzar's subsequent actions illustrate the cyclical nature of power and conflict in the ancient Near East. Babylon's resurgence under Nebuchadnezzar not only restored its former glory, but also positioned it as a formidable force that shaped the region's history for years to come. The historical records, both biblical and archaeological, offer a striking confirmation of these significant events, underscoring the enduring legacy of Babylon and its rulers. The kingdom of Judah ceased to exist, and the Jews became a people in exile. Psalm 137 poignantly records their extreme sadness, as Jewish captives cried out for their homeland. Babylon, at the height of its glory, must have dazzled these exiles upon their arrival. Greek historians noted that Babylon surpassed all known cities in splendor, attracting visitors from many lands to witness its wonders. Nebuchadnezzar was both a great builder and a formidable general, akin to Ramses II of Egypt and Solomon of Israel. Under his rule, Babylon became a city of magnificent palaces, temples, parks, and gardens. The sheer scale of the city was overwhelming, with a population estimated between 100,000 and 200,000, making it the largest city on earth at that time. Our detailed knowledge of Nebuchadnezzar's Babylon stems from the diligent work of German archaeologist Robert Koldewey, who began his excavations in 1899. Initially, Koldewey's reports were met with skepticism, but as he uncovered the Babylon described in the Bible, his work gained significant recognition across Europe. Koldewey discovered piles of beautiful blue-glazed bricks north of the city, remnants of the walls flanking Babylon's processional way. Brick was the standard building material for the Babylonians, and Koldewey sent these bricks back to Germany for identification and reassembly. The results were astounding. The Pergamon Museum in Berlin now houses these reassembled bricks from Nebuchadnezzar's era. Among the impressive finds are the magnificent lions, symbolizing the goddess Ishtar, one of Babylon's major deities. There were 120 of these lions flanking the approaches to the massive Ishtar Gate. Today, the processional way in Babylon, partially rebuilt by archaeologists, still gives an idea of its former magnificence, despite lacking the beautiful glazed brick lions. The paving stones on this boulevard are the very ones upon which Nebuchadnezzar himself walked. One notable figure impressed by Koldewey's discoveries was the pioneer filmmaker W. Griffith. In 1916, Griffith produced Intolerance, a historical film depicting the theme of man's inhumanity to man. The centerpiece of this film was a spectacular reenactment of life in Babylon, climaxing with the city's fall. Griffith's film brought to the silver screen the grandeur of Nebuchadnezzar's Babylon, a city buried for 25 centuries. His portrayal highlighted Babylon's architectural wonders, bustling life, and incredible greed and sensuality. Griffith's depiction showed a city teeming with life, including merchants, fortune tellers, strolling musicians, money lenders, soldiers, prostitutes, government officials, bankers, and slaves. Nebuchadnezzar's Babylon, in its heyday, would dwarf many modern cities in size and splendor. Babylon was roughly square, divided by the Euphrates River. Built with precision, its broad, straight streets intersected at right angles. Babylon was enclosed by a double defensive wall circled by a moat, making it the most securely protected city in the ancient world. According to ancient sources, Babylon's walls were over 300 feet high and 85 feet thick, wide enough for a 4-horse chariot to turn around on top. Defensive towers were positioned at regular intervals, reinforcing the city's impregnable reputation. The processional way was the city's main north-south avenue, over 70 feet wide, paved with stone, and flanked by carved lions. This impressive boulevard led to the great temple dedicated to the god Marduk, considered the most amazing street in the ancient world. The defensive walls and the processional way were just the beginning of Babylon's wonders, showcasing the city's grandeur and Nebuchadnezzar's ambition to immortalize his legacy through monumental architecture. Babylon's rise under Nebuchadnezzar not only marked a resurgence of power, but also highlighted the city's cultural and architectural achievements. The city's grandeur left an indelible mark on history, influencing civilizations for centuries. Babylon's splendor, as recorded by historians and archaeologists, stands as a testament to its remarkable place in the ancient world. The Ishtar Gate, a marvel of ancient Babylon, stands as a testament to the city's grandeur and power. Named after Ishtar, the goddess of love, it was one of 8 fortified entrances to the city. Its vividly colored glazed bricks were meticulously reassembled in Berlin by German archaeologists, showcasing Babylonian artistry and engineering prowess. To the world, this gate symbolized Babylon's unrivaled might, through which victorious armies passed after distant conquests. Today, visitors to Babylon can see a half-size replica near the original site, built by the Iraqi government. Nebuchadnezzar, the legendary Babylonian king, also constructed a magnificent palace nearby, featuring 5 expansive courtyards and numerous apartments. This palace was Nebuchadnezzar's pride, described as the marvel of mankind and the center of Babylonian majesty. Though modern reconstructions with bricks bearing Saddam Hussein's name now top the ancient ruins, they offer a glimpse into the palace's former glory. Entering the palace grounds, visitors could traverse from the main entrance through the eastern and central courtyards, where dignitaries, ambassadors, and court officials once walked 25 centuries ago. Nebuchadnezzar's throne room, south of the central courtyard, rivaled the famed Hall of Mirrors in Versailles in size. A reconstruction of its glazed brick frieze, now housed in Berlin's Pergamon Museum, hints at its original splendor and the grandeur that once defined Babylonian architecture. Adjacent to the palace, along the Euphrates River, lay the renowned Hanging Gardens of Babylon, counted among the ancient wonders of the world. According to legend, Nebuchadnezzar commissioned these terraced gardens to please his wife, who missed the lush landscapes of her homeland amid Babylon's flat terrain. Nebuchadnezzar's ambitious public projects were not just feats of engineering, but also tools of propaganda designed to awe and impress all who beheld them. The grandeur of Babylon, its gods, and its rulers were meant to be etched into the minds of its citizens and visitors alike. Each monument, from the Ishtar Gate to the Hanging Gardens and the opulent palace, reflected Babylon's cultural sophistication and its rulers' determination to leave a lasting legacy. These remnants of Babylonian greatness, though weathered by time and modern interventions, continue to captivate historians and tourists, offering glimpses into an ancient civilization's aspirations and achievements. In the shadows of these ruins, the echoes of Nebuchadnezzar's reign still resonate, reminding us of a time when Babylon stood as a beacon of human ingenuity and artistic brilliance amidst the sands of Mesopotamia. For a long time, archaeologists believed the Hanging Gardens were located near Babylon's Ishtar Gate. At the palace's northeast corner, Professor Colby's discovery of an underground crypt with 14 arched vaults and a unique well with 3 shafts fueled speculation that these structures supported the weight of the gardens. However, subsequent research, including the finding of ration lists for Jewish exiles, led many to conclude these vaults likely served as a warehouse and administrative complex. Today, the gardens are thought to have been situated closer to the river, at the opposite end of the palace. Imagine Babylon at its zenith, towering walls adorned with vibrant symbols of empire. Yet, beneath its grandeur, Babylon was infamous for decadence and sensuality. Detached from the true God, steeped in commerce and idolatry, its moral decline earned it the reputation as a cesspool of vice, notable even among the licentious ancient Near East. Babylon's allure lay in its wealth, power, and overt sensuality, epitomized by Nebuchadnezzar's reign. Its prosperity and commercial prowess seduced neighboring peoples into venerating Babylonian gods like Marduk and Ishtar. As later described in the Book of Revelation, Babylon embodies a potent blend of idolatry and economic dominance. Another emblem of Nebuchadnezzar's Babylon was the ziggurat, a colossal 7-stage tower believed to stand where Nimrod's original Tower of Babel once existed, located half a mile south of the royal palace. It soared nearly 300 feet, rivaling the height of the Statue of Liberty, known as Etem Ananke, the house that is the foundation of heaven and earth. Its summit was adorned with a temple covered in blue glazed bricks. Nebuchadnezzar boasted of elevating it to challenge the heavens, echoing Nimrod's ancient ambition. In this opulent city, the spirit of Nimrod persisted, a spirit of pride and defiance against God. Babylon's allure was undeniable, drawing, allured by its economic prowess and sensual indulgence. Yet, its moral decay and idolatry foretold a reckoning, a recurring theme throughout its history and in biblical prophecy. Babylon's legacy endures as a cautionary tale, a city of grandeur and excess, whose splendor masked moral decay and spiritual emptiness. Its ruins and legends remind us of the fleeting nature of earthly power and the consequences of forsaking divine truth. Today, nothing remains of the ziggurat known as the Zara except for the crumbling remnants of its base. Once a towering edifice dedicated to Marduk, the supreme Babylonian deity, it housed the colossal golden statue of Marduk, believed to be crafted from an astonishing 22 tons of gold. Marduk was commonly revered as Bel, the lord from the Marduk shrine, and Nebuchadnezzar's empire spread the worship of Marduk across the ancient Near East. This widespread idolatry prompted the prophet Jeremiah to foretell Babylon's downfall, prophesying that Marduk would be put to shame along with Babylon's other idols. Babylon, with its imposing walls and vast wealth, dominated the ancient world, yet it was also infamous for its cruelty and pervasive idolatry. Like at the Tower of Babel, where human pride provoked divine intervention, God's warnings to Nebuchadnezzar came through troubling dreams, signaling imminent judgment from the Creator himself. Among Nebuchadnezzar's courtiers, only a young Jewish captive named Daniel understood the divine messages. Daniel, carried off to Babylon with other prominent Jerusalemites, was positioned within Nebuchadnezzar's inner circle, an astute choice by ancient kings who sought non-native advisors to minimize internal threats. Daniel and his companions Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego remained steadfast in their faith, defying materialism and idol worship. Despite their captivity, their unwavering loyalty to the God of Israel became legendary. One of the most renowned episodes involved Nebuchadnezzar's decree to worship a golden statue. When Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego refused, Nebuchadnezzar, furious with rage, ordered them cast into a fiery furnace heated sevenfold. Even the soldiers who approached the furnace perished from its intense heat. Yet miraculously, the three men emerged unscathed. Nebuchadnezzar, astonished and humbled, saw not 3 but 4 figures walking unharmed in the furnace, one resembling a son of the gods. This miraculous deliverance affirmed the faithfulness of Daniel's companions and underscored God's sovereignty over earthly powers. Nebuchadnezzar, despite his initial pride and arrogance, eventually acknowledged the God of Israel as supreme. This episode not only showcased divine intervention, but also the profound influence of faith in the face of adversity. Once outflanked, the astonished Nebuchadnezzar summoned Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego to his side. Astonishingly, the fire had not harmed their bodies, nor did they smell of smoke. In a remarkable turn of events, Nebuchadnezzar praised the God who had sent his angel to rescue them and elevate them to high positions within his kingdom. The relationship between Daniel and Nebuchadnezzar was indeed unusual. On one side stood Nebuchadnezzar, the pagan ruler whose empires might be built on military conquest and forced labor. On the other side was Daniel, a young Jewish captive brought from his homeland to serve in Babylon, a faithful servant of the one true God, yet loyal to his new king. Throughout Babylon's history, epitomized by structures like the ziggurat and events like the fiery furnace ordeal, God's providence and justice were continually demonstrated. Babylon's rise and fall serve as a cautionary tale, a reminder of the consequences of hubris and idolatry, contrasted with the enduring faith of those who remain steadfast in their belief in the one true God. The ruins of Babylon today are a poignant testament to this ancient drama, a reminder that earthly empires, no matter how grand, are subject to the judgment and providence of the divine. Daniel and his companions' unwavering faith in the midst of Babylon's opulence and idolatry continues to inspire generations, their story echoing through millennia as a testament to courage, conviction, and the triumph of faith over adversity. In the book of Daniel, Nebuchadnezzar is portrayed as somewhat sympathetic to the God of Israel in Daniel. However, it would be a stretch to say that Nebuchadnezzar placed his full faith in the God of Israel. Like many ancient rulers, Nebuchadnezzar made decisions based on political pragmatism rather than personal faith. During Daniel's captivity in Babylon, both he and the king experienced troubling dreams and visions granted by God to provide insight into the future. One particularly disturbing dream, described in Daniel chapter 2, involved a colossal image, a head of gold, chest and arms of silver, belly and thighs of bronze, legs of iron, and feet partly iron and partly clay. A stone, not cut by human hands, struck the image on its feet of iron and clay, shattering it to pieces and becoming a great mountain that filled the earth. Daniel interpreted the dream for Nebuchadnezzar, revealing that each part of the image represented successive kingdoms, with Nebuchadnezzar's Babylon being the head of gold. The stone symbolized the everlasting kingdom of God, which supersedes all earthly kingdoms. Upon hearing this interpretation, Nebuchadnezzar acknowledged the God of Israel once again, but his pride soon resurfaced. The book of Daniel also portrays Nebuchadnezzar as a ruler filled with arrogance and prone to fits of rage. Despite controlling a vast empire, he struggled to control himself. Daniel warned Nebuchadnezzar that unless he humbled himself before God, the Almighty would humble him by force. However, Nebuchadnezzar continued to glorify himself rather than giving credit to God. Ultimately, Nebuchadnezzar's arrogance led to his downfall. While walking on the roof of his palace and surveying Babylon, he boasted about its greatness and its role in its construction. Before he could finish speaking, a voice from heaven proclaimed his judgment. The kingdom was taken from him. That very hour, Nebuchadnezzar's pride brought about his downfall. He was driven from human society, living like an animal, eating grass, and enduring the elements until he acknowledged the sovereignty of God over all earthly powers. This humbling experience taught Nebuchadnezzar that there exists a kingdom far greater than his own, an eternal spiritual kingdom ruled by God. His story serves as a powerful reminder of the consequences of pride and the ultimate authority of God over human affairs. Nebuchadnezzar's descent into madness marked a pivotal period of 7 years, during which he abandoned human behavior for that of a wild beast. At the end of this tumultuous time, his sanity was miraculously restored, a transformative experience that imparted a crucial lesson. This lesson, central to the book of Daniel, emphasizes that ultimate authority lies with God, not with mortal rulers. Regardless of their power or influence, Nebuchadnezzar's own words upon his restoration resonate as a warning and a timeless truth for leaders in all spheres of influence, whether in governance or business. In Daniel 4:34, Nebuchadnezzar says, "In the end, I, Nebuchadnezzar, lifted my eyes to heaven, and my sanity returned. I praised and honored the highest. I glorified him who lives forever. His dominion is eternal. His kingdom endures from generation to generation. No one can restrain his hand or question his actions. He is just in all he does, and he humbles those who walk in pride." Despite Nebuchadnezzar's personal transformation and acknowledgement of divine supremacy, his descendants failed to heed this lesson. Following his 43-year reign, Nebuchadnezzar passed away in 563 BC, succeeded by a line of increasingly weaker kings. The last ruler of Babylon, Nabonidus, ascended to the throne in 555 BC. During his reign, Nabonidus ventured to the distant oasis of Tema in Arabia for 10 years, leaving his son Belshazzar to govern Babylon in his absence. Belshazzar's historicity was long debated among scholars until archaeological discoveries in 1854 provided compelling evidence. Clay cylinders unearthed at ancient sites in Mesopotamia contained inscriptions detailing King Nabonidus' activities, including references to his eldest son, Belshazzar. These discoveries corroborated the biblical account in the Book of Daniel, which had been questioned for centuries due to the absence of Belshazzar's name in historical records outside the Bible. The cylinders concluded with prayers for King Nabonidus' health and blessings for his son Belshazzar, underscoring the historical accuracy of Daniel's narrative. This revelation dispelled doubts among skeptics and affirmed the Bible's reliability in recounting the reign of Belshazzar as Babylon's final king. This archaeological discovery holds significant relevance to the biblical account in the Book of Daniel, particularly concerning Belshazzar's reign. In Daniel chapter 5, verse 29, Belshazzar is recorded proclaiming Daniel as the third highest ruler in the kingdom, with Belshazzar himself and his father Nabonidus occupying the first and second positions, respectively. This detail underscores the meticulous accuracy often found in the Bible's historical accounts. During Belshazzar's rule, Daniel received another pivotal vision from God, offering prophetic insights into future empires that would dominate the ancient Near East. This vision, depicted in Daniel chapter 7, features 4 distinct beasts arising from the sea, each symbolizing a successive empire. The first beast resembled a lion with eagle's wings, symbolizing the Babylonian Empire under Nebuchadnezzar's reign, known for its swift conquests and majestic power. Historical artifacts such as the monumental basalt lion found in Babylon affirm the lion's symbolic significance, representing both the Seti and the goddess Ishtar, with whom Babylon was closely associated. Next, Daniel sees a bear raised on one side, with 3 ribs in its mouth, representing the Medo-Persian Empire, which followed Babylon in dominating the region. The third beast is likened to a 4-headed leopard with 4 wings, symbolizing the swift and expansive conquests of Alexander the Great and the subsequent division of his empire into 4 kingdoms after his death. Lastly, Daniel witnesses a 4th terrifying beast with iron teeth and 10 horns, representing the Roman Empire, renowned for its formidable strength and iron rule over vast territories. Understanding these symbolic representations requires insight into Babylonian culture and its use of composite beasts in religious symbolism. For instance, the dragon of Marduk, a hybrid creature with features like those described in Daniel's vision, was a prominent symbol in Babylonian art, used to decorate structures such as the Ishtar Gate. These beasts held significant religious meaning for Babylonians, influencing Daniel's prophetic visions. An angelic interpreter explains to Daniel that these beasts represent successive empires that will exert dominion over the ancient Near East. This vision serves as a revelation of God's sovereign plan, demonstrating his control over the rise and fall of nations according to his divine purpose. The scene shifts to an event during Belshazzar's reign, when he hosts a lavish feast for 1,000 of his empire's elite. The occasion is remarkable as it occurs while Babylon is under the rule of the Persians, revealing Belshazzar's confidence in the impregnability of the city's walls. This overconfidence becomes his downfall. During the banquet, Belshazzar makes a bold display of arrogance by ordering the use of the sacred vessels taken from the temple in Jerusalem by his grandfather, Nebuchadnezzar. He raises a toast to the Babylonian gods, defying the God of Israel in a brazen act of idolatry. In a dramatic and supernatural occurrence, a mysterious hand appears, and blazing letters are written on the wall of the king's palace. This event, interpreted by Daniel, foretells Belshazzar's imminent demise and the downfall of Babylon. The inscription, Manel, Manel, Telkel, a Farson, signifies God's judgment on Belshazzar and Babylon, interpreted to mean that Belshazzar's kingdom is weighed and found wanting, and will be divided and given to the Medes and Persians. In the same hour, the fingers of a man's hand appeared and wrote opposite the lampstand on the plaster of the wall of the king's palace, and the king saw the part of the hand that wrote. Then the king's countenance changed and his thoughts troubled him. Now, all the king's wise men came, but they could not read the writing or make known to the king its interpretation. Then Daniel was brought in before the king and said, I will read the writing to the king and make known to him the interpretation. And this is the inscription that was written. Mene, Mene, Tekel, Parsin. This is the interpretation of each word. Mene, God has numbered your kingdom and finished it. Tekel, you have been weighed in the balances and found wanting peer. Your kingdom has been divided and given to the Medes and Persians. The interpretation of the mysterious writing on the wall during Belshazzar's feast reveals profound insights into Babylon's downfall and the shifting tides of ancient power. Literally translated, the words Manel, Manel, Telkel, a Farsin referred to common Babylonian weights meaning numbered, Tekel meaning weighed, and a Farsin signifying division. These were units used in commerce when currency, as we know it today, did not exist. Transactions were conducted using measured weights to ensure fairness and accuracy. Daniel's interpretation of these words played on their root meanings, emphasizing a message of divine judgment and imminent downfall for Babylon. That very night, while the ominous message glowed on the palace wall, Cyrus the Great's Persian armies were stealthily infiltrating the seemingly impregnable city of Babylon. Despite its mighty walls and formidable defenses, Babylon could not withstand the decree of God. The prophet Isaiah provides background to Cyrus's role in Babylon's fall, depicting him as an instrument of God's will, chosen to conquer nations and open doors that no man could shut. Isaiah's words foreshadow Cyrus's unexpected conquest of Babylon, illustrating God's sovereignty over the rise and fall of kingdoms. Historically, Cyrus devised a strategic plan to breach Babylon's defenses. While Belshazzar and his guests indulged in revelry, Persian troops diverted the Euphrates River upstream, lowering its water level to create a passable entry point under the city walls. Simultaneously, a Persian spy within the city unlocked the gates of the inner wall, enabling Cyrus's army to enter Babylon covertly under the cover of darkness. The Babylonians, ensnared in their feast and idolatrous celebrations, were caught completely off guard. Babylon, renowned as an economic and cultural powerhouse of the ancient world, had also become infamous for its moral decadence and corruption. Its leaders, intoxicated by their power and prosperity, had disregarded warnings of impending judgment. Belshazzar's fate, as foretold by Daniel, was sealed that night. His reign ended abruptly as the Persians took control of the city. The fall of Babylon serves as a stark reminder of God's authority over human history and the consequences of pride and moral decline. Babylon's demise, symbolized by the transition from the head of gold to the chest and arms of silver, as described in Daniel's prophetic visions, illustrates the fleeting nature of human empires in the face of divine judgment. Yet Babylon's story did not end with Belshazzar's demise. Under Persian rule, the city persisted, albeit diminished in prominence. Over 2 centuries later, Alexander the Great, driven by visions of global conquest and unity, conquered Persia and captured Babylon in 323 BC. Alexander's dream of unifying the world under one civilization and one ruler died with him in Babylon, marking the city's continued significance in shaping world history. The rise and fall of Babylon echo through time as a cautionary tale, reminding us of the cycles of human hubris and divine intervention. Its legacy as a cultural, political, and economic center resonates in ancient texts and archaeological remains, offering lessons about the rise and fall of civilizations and the enduring impact of moral choices on collective destiny. Babylon's downfall, prophesied and executed through divine providence, underscores the limits of human power and the inevitability of God's judgment. Its story reverberates as a timeless reminder that kingdoms rise and fall according to God's sovereign plan, challenging us to heed the lessons of history and acknowledge God's authority over the affairs of nations and individuals alike. In the centuries following its once glorious zenith, Babylon descended into a slow decay. By the time of Jesus Christ, the grand palaces and majestic temples of Babylon lay in ruin. The shifting sands had swallowed its parks and waterways, while the Euphrates River had altered its course, further contributing to the city's decline. When a Roman emperor visited Babylon some 85 years after Jesus' death, all he found were scattered mounds, scattered stones, and extensive ruins. Today, this former superpower of the ancient world stands as a desolate and forsaken place. Its palaces, temples, parks, gardens, and once bustling streets now lie in disrepair, reduced to dust, rubble, and cracked bricks bearing the name of Nebuchadnezzar strewn across the barren landscape. Only a small section of the city has been painstakingly restored as an archaeological park, and even this restoration covers only a fraction of its vast expanse. Babylon, once a thriving metropolis of unparalleled grandeur, now stands abandoned and uninhabited. The prophetic words declaring Babylon's downfall, akin to Sodom and Gomorrah, have indeed come to pass. Its glory days are long gone, marked by a symbolic end that transcends mere physical decay, represents the collapse of an ideology and a civilization that dared to defy God. Even Alexander the Great, renowned for his conquests and vision of global unity centered on Babylon, was captivated by its legacy. In the New Testament, Babylon emerges not just as a geographical location but as a symbol, an embodiment of human pride, power, and rebellion against divine authority. Throughout history, Babylon serves as a cautionary tale, a symbol of the pinnacle of human achievement, corrupted by arrogance and ultimately facing divine judgment. Its rulers, likened to aspiring gods, pursued wealth, power, and dominance at the expense of spiritual values and moral integrity. This pattern persists in every age, where humanity finds itself amid a spiritual Babylon, a world consumed by materialism and self-serving motives, neglecting the spiritual realm and the kingdom of God. The Book of Revelation, attributed to John and often considered one of the Bible's most enigmatic texts, unfolds as a vision from God. It belongs to a genre known as apocalyptic literature, prevalent in the 1st century and characterized by vivid imagery, symbolic visions, and heavenly journeys. Among its famous depictions are the mysterious 4 horsemen, symbols of conquest, war, famine, and death, representing the tumultuous events preceding the ultimate fulfillment of God's plan. Apocalyptic literature, including Revelation, employs rich symbolism to convey profound truths about spiritual realities and future events. It speaks of cosmic battles between good and evil, the final judgment, and the establishment of God's eternal kingdom. Babylon, referred to as Babylon the Great, emerges in Revelation as a metaphor for all that opposes God, an embodiment of human arrogance, idolatry, and moral decadence. Its ultimate destruction signifies the triumph of divine justice over worldly powers and the establishment of God's reign over all creation. Babylon's historical and symbolic significance extends far beyond its physical ruins. It serves as a potent reminder of the consequences of human pride and rebellion against divine authority. From its rise to power, through its eventual decline into oblivion, Babylon encapsulates the fleeting nature of earthly kingdoms and the enduring sovereignty of God. Its portrayal in Revelation underscores the ongoing spiritual battle between good and evil, urging humanity to heed the lessons of history and embrace God's kingdom as the ultimate reality and destination. Apocalyptic literature, such as the Book of Revelation, is filled with rich symbolism and vivid imagery that requires a keen understanding of its cultural and historical context to grasp its deeper meanings. Animals play a significant role in this genre, ranging from natural creatures like rams to fantastical beasts with multiple heads and wings. These creatures are not merely decorative, but serve as symbolic representations of cosmic forces and spiritual realities. Colors also hold profound symbolism in the Book of Revelation. White robes signify purity and victory, while red symbolizes bloodshed and sacrifice, and gold represents divine glory and righteousness. These colors create a visual spectacle that enhances the dramatic narrative of the apocalyptic visions, underscoring the spiritual battles and cosmic conflicts depicted within. Numbers, likewise, carry symbolic weight in apocalyptic literature. 7, for instance, symbolizes completeness and perfection, appearing frequently in Revelation to denote divine intervention and judgment. 12 signifies God's chosen people, mirroring the 12 tribes of Israel and the 12 apostles. Understanding the book of Revelation necessitates familiarity with the Old Testament, as its symbolism draws heavily from prophetic writings and historical narratives. The author of Revelation, traditionally identified as John, uses these symbols to convey messages about the future and the ultimate triumph of God's kingdom over earthly powers. During the 1st century, when John penned Revelation, Christians faced severe persecution under the Roman Empire. Babylon the Great, described in Revelation as a harlot, symbolizes this oppressive world power. Just as historical Babylon once enslaved Israel, Rome posed a significant threat to early Christians' faith and allegiance to God. The imagery of Babylon thus serves as a cautionary tale, warning believers against compromising their spiritual integrity amidst societal pressures and material temptations. The symbolism of Babylon as a harlot in Revelation underscores the insidious allure of worldly wealth and power. The woman adorned in purple and scarlet, glittering with gold, precious stones, and pearls, represents a city that seduces the nations with its material splendor and idolatrous practices. The harlot metaphor, prevalent throughout the Bible, illustrates how individuals and governments alike can be lured into spiritual unfaithfulness by pursuing wealth, power, and false gods instead of true worship of the Creator. The city of Babylon in Revelation symbolizes more than a historical place. It embodies an enduring attitude of defiance against God and His teachings. This opposition to divine authority manifests in various forms throughout history, perpetuating a cycle of spiritual seduction and moral compromise. The harlot imagery poignantly illustrates how societies can be swayed from their devotion to God, pursuing earthly desires and ideologies that lead them astray. The book of Revelation employs vivid imagery and symbolic language to convey profound spiritual truths about the ongoing battle between good and evil. Its apocalyptic visions, filled with creatures, colors, and numbers, paint a picture of cosmic conflict and divine judgment. Babylon the Great serves as a potent symbol of worldly power and spiritual corruption, warning believers to remain steadfast in their faith and allegiance to God amid the allure of materialism and idolatry. The Bible employs the metaphor of harlotry in various contexts, illustrating both spiritual unfaithfulness and the corruption of values for material gain. In Revelation, chapter 17, Babylon symbolizes human civilization organized in defiance of God, an influential city that exerts dominion over the earth's rulers. This metaphor traces back through biblical history, from the arrogance of the Tower of Babel to the opulence of Nebuchadnezzar's Babylon, culminating in Revelation's depiction of Babylon the Great. John, the author of Revelation, vividly portrays Babylon as enticing and alluring to highlight its wealth, prosperity, and perceived security. This portrayal serves as a warning to Christians, cautioning them against being seduced by the superficial attractions of worldly power and material success. In Revelation, Babylon the Great symbolizes a colossal anti-Christian world system driven by the relentless pursuit of economic power through global trade. Its fatal allure lies in the pursuit of commercial gain at any cost, depicted metaphorically as nations and kings engaging in spiritual adultery and merchants amassing wealth from her extravagance and excess. Throughout history, numerous interpretations have sought to identify Babylon with specific nations, empires, or religious entities. Each attempt, however, has ultimately proven erroneous. The Book of Revelation's history of interpretation reveals a recurring pattern where successive generations believed themselves to be the direct recipients of its prophecies, only to realize their interpretations needed revision. This ongoing cycle of reinterpretation underscores the complexity and caution required in understanding prophetic texts like Revelation. The central message of Revelation transcends speculation about specific historical or future events. It affirms God's ultimate triumph through Jesus Christ over all worldly powers and spiritual opposition. This core message, the victory of God's kingdom, is paramount, regardless of debates about the identity or timing of symbolic figures like Babylon, the beast, or the false prophet. The cautionary tale of Babylon in Revelation reminds readers that the pursuit of worldly wealth and power, while enticing, leads to spiritual compromise and moral decay. By portraying Babylon as a symbol of humanity's collective rebellion against divine authority, Revelation prompts introspection and warns against placing undue trust in earthly systems and material prosperity. Ultimately, the enduring lesson of Revelation lies not in deciphering precise timelines or identities, but in embracing faithfulness to God amid the allure of worldly allurements. It calls believers to remain vigilant, steadfast in their allegiance to God's kingdom, and resolute in their rejection of values that oppose His divine will. Thus, Revelation's imagery of Babylon serves as a timeless reminder of the dangers of spiritual compromise and the enduring hope found in God's ultimate victory over evil and injustice. The book of Revelation culminates in a vivid depiction of the final defeat of Babylon, the great and ancient symbol of human arrogance, materialism, and rebellion against God. This symbolic city represents not only historical Babylon, but also embodies a pervasive attitude and system that has persisted through the ages and will reach its climax at the end of time. Despite the apparent power and allure of Babylon, Revelation assures us of God's ultimate triumph over all worldly kingdoms and systems. Revelation, chapter 18 paints a dramatic scene of Babylon's fall, provoking lament from the kings and merchants who benefited from her wealth and luxury. They witness Babylon's destruction with horror, mourning the suddenness and completeness of her demise. A mighty angel hurls a large millstone into the sea, symbolizing Babylon's irretrievable fall and permanent destruction. This passage underscores the sobering reality that societies consumed by greed and moral decay will ultimately face divine judgment. The story of Babylon serves as a cautionary tale for contemporary societies, marked by materialism and the pursuit of wealth at any cost. Babylon's legacy of exploitation and moral compromise finds parallels in today's world, where greed often drives business practices and personal ambitions. John's warning to come out of her, my people, goes through the ages, urging believers to resist the seductive allure of wealth and power and instead live according to the teachings of Jesus, characterized by service, generosity, and humility. Throughout the New Testament, warnings against the dangers of materialism abound. Jesus himself cautioned that one cannot serve both God and wealth, emphasizing the spiritual dangers of prioritizing material possessions over spiritual values. In Revelation, Babylon's opulence and allure symbolize the enticement of material wealth and power, challenging believers to choose between allegiance to God's kingdom and the fleeting rewards of worldly success. Despite Babylon's destruction in Revelation, the narrative does not end in despair. Rather, it marks the beginning of a new era where Christ reigns victorious alongside his saints. Revelation presents a vision of hope, a future where Jesus triumphs over all forces that oppose God's kingdom. This victory, rooted in Christ's sacrificial death and resurrection, ensures that God's ultimate plan for redemption and restoration will prevail. The book of Revelation, therefore, serves as a dual affirmation, looking back to Christ's victory on the cross and forward to his future triumph over all powers of evil and darkness. This comprehensive victory guarantees hope for believers across generations, reminding us that God's sovereignty and justice will ultimately prevail. From Nimrod's Babylon to Nebuchadnezzar's grandeur and the apocalyptic Babylon the Great, the enduring legacy of Babylon challenges believers to consider which kingdom they serve: the fleeting powers of Babylon or the eternal kingdom of God. Babylon symbolizes the epitome of human power divorced from divine authority, contrasting sharply with the enduring power and glory of Christ's kingdom. The choice is clear: to align with God's kingdom under the reign of Jesus Christ, whose power and glory surpass all worldly empires and ideologies. Babylon's story in Revelation serves as a stark reminder of the consequences of spiritual compromise and materialism. It calls believers to fidelity and allegiance to God's kingdom, where true power and lasting glory reside. Ultimately, Babylon the Great learns the timeless lesson that only God's kingdom endures, and only Christ's victory is absolute. Subscribe, like, share, and comment.